Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. All right, welcome back to the episode of the Blue Collar Millionaire Show, where we empower people to live a more abundant life with more freedom and clarity in their future. And we've got a very special guest. Going to do something a little bit different today. Martial arts instructor Cory Davis with Krav Maga Anchorage is here to join us today. And Cory, we've talked a lot about this idea of a discipline, an adherence to a regimen in your life, and just how important that is. And there's some financial connotations, obviously some physical connotations with what you do. But before we get into that, for those who don't know what Krav Maga is, they've never heard of that before, because as we talked about before, it's not as commercialized. Can you explain a little bit of what Krav Maga looks like and how it differs from other martial arts?
First off, Krav Maga is strictly self-protection. So when we talk about a lot of systems out there, quite a few of them cater to sport, and there's a significant difference in between the two. Also, when it comes to Krav Maga, you also have the aspect of where not all Krav Maga is the same, right? Not all self-defense systems are the same. So we focus on from empty hand, multiple opponents, to disarms of weapons, tool work. We do all these things because that's our mission. That's our mission statement. We want to provide people with the ability to protect themselves and their loved ones.
It is, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's a multidisciplinary skill set. I mean, there's grappling, yes. There's some judo type, some throws, some strikes.
Yes,
like
boxing,
you said, some
mixed,
open hands,
wrestling.
Some weapon.
Yes, yeah. Oh, it has a blend.
Some dirty boxing.
Yes, so it's a mixed martial art, but not in the mindset that people would put it like in a sporting fashion. Mm-hmm. But it is a blend of systems from around. Yeah.
And it's the reason why it hasn't been as commercialized is it came out of Israeli military.
Yes.
And is designed to actually work in real life and death situations.
Yes.
Not to look good on TV.
Yes. True.
And I think, that there's people wonder, like, what does it have to do with finance? But like, that is an important distinction. I think there's theories and ideas and tactics that look cool and sound cool.
Yes.
And then there's things that work when the crap hits the fan.
Yes. So true.
And I know you've experienced that. And we've talked a lot about the frustration in both of our industries where there's so much misinformation and anybody can look like an expert. All you have to do is know a little bit more than the average individual. And you go on your Instagram, you go on your YouTube, you make some reels, like whatever. And these people haven't either experienced that real life situation. It's not been tested, or they're simply taking maybe a little bit of truth and wrapping their own ideas and harebrained information around it. I mean, yes. How often do you see that in the self-defense world?
More often than I like to even go into, but it seems that nowadays anybody with an internet connection is now an expert. And the problem and issue is that because of that, people don't go deep in and try to investigate to see what this person's actual background is, and where did they learn, where did all the information that they're trying to provide me come from, right? Mm-hmm. So you can get on there and say, I got a technique that works this way and all the rest of the stuff, and this doesn't work this way and this doesn't work. But I noticed that whenever somebody that you see on the internet talks about something doesn't work, right, they never really provide a true answer to something that's better, because they're keyboard warriors, and that's dangerous to people watching, because you're given that misinformation and it could potentially cause, some serious harm to them and their loved ones too. So Yeah, the misinformation is definitely out there, even when it comes in the Krav Maga society or world. You have a lot of not so good Krav Maga schools because it may not be their fault that they just wasn't taught or they went to a weak course or whatever it may be, but you can't do shortcuts, right? You can't do shortcuts when it comes to any life skill, right? Anything that has to do with building your future, anything that has to do with your everyday life, you can't take shortcuts.
Well, we're talking about a couple things here that are really important. I mean, you're talking about training, not just your body, but your mind to be in a position where you can defend yourself, your family, your loved ones. Here, we train people to protect themselves financially.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's a lot riding on both of our career choices.
Yes.
We're not, nothing wrong with like food service industry or something like that. But, if we serve you that tea and it's a little tepid, a little lukewarm, that's not the end of the world. But if you and I screw up in our professional life, like that could set somebody up for a huge failure later in life. And the problem is they won't know it until it's too late.
Exactly. And that's why it's like one of the core principles that we have is you have your preparedness and your awareness, right? And obviously in your field and in what you do, it translates the same way. Because the fact of it is that you have to be prepared, right? Because things change, right? You have to be aware of how things are changing. Right. So in self-defense, it's the same thing. I have to be aware of my surroundings. Right. And I have to be prepared to deal with what to come. I would prefer to avoid or de-escalate, but there comes a time that may not be possible. So I also have to be prepared for that. Yes.
Yeah. Just thinking of different parallels between our two disciplines too, because in that preparedness, like you can't worry about every potential risk or else you never get out of bed. I mean, people worry about this, like investing, like, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this person gets elected? What if this, da, 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 da. And like part of being prepared is knowing like, I can't prepare for every individual risk, but I can have a general preparedness and an awareness of what's going on around me. So I'm not going to panic about everything out there that might get me.
Yes.
But I'm also not going to put my head in the sand. So how do you create that balance between being prepared, but not paranoid?
Well, a big part of that is that when people often sit there and they talk about they're aware of the surroundings, right? I ask them, okay, so you see the threat, right? If you're able to avoid it, that's obvious you avoid it, okay? But first thing you're doing, though, is you are aware of it. You're analyzing whether or not that's a good direction to go, and then you take action. So I don't walk out my house and every person I see, I turn away from, right? But if I can assess, if I can assess that this looks a little bit fishy, I can avoid it. If I happen to be right there, say somebody approaches me at my vehicle or whatever, that's a different assessment that I'm doing, because when it comes to self-defense, things can get volatile real quick. So I have to be able to get my students to understand that, look, I need to be able to assess very quickly in a short period of time where their hands are at, how they're positioning, if they got more than one person with them. Do I have an exit, right? All these things have to, but you have to train that. You have to work that. You have to work those skill sets. You just can't come out there and do one class and be like, I got it all figured out, because that's not how any life skill works.
And we'll come back to that in just a second. Okay. But something else that you just touched on, it's this idea of acting on what you do know, so you're less likely to react inappropriately to everything around you.
Yes.
And I mean, I think we see that all the time in our world where people spend their life reacting.
Yes.
Because they don't feel empowered. They don't have a strategy in mind to act on, and it leaves them basically playing the victim.
Bingo.
And I know that happens. I mean, I'm sure you experience that too. People have kind of taken on that victim role. And, when you see somebody in a situation, and it could even be in training. And that's what's interesting about some of like Krav Maga, submission grappling, like some of these where you can your body can feel like in a life and death situation. It's not, but your body doesn't know that. And being able to be in those situations without panicking.
Yes.
Because people say, like, don't feel fear. Like, you have to, fear is necessary to keep you alive. If you didn't feel fear, you would be reckless.
Yes.
You know, nobody wants somebody to guide them that doesn't feel fear, but it's being able to feel the fear, but act appropriately and not panic.
And that brings you to the aspect of discipline and control. Because when you train in high stress situations, it better prepares you. So you know that, hey, this is not where I panic and freeze, right? I've gained the tools and the understanding that I don't panic and freeze in situation. I go into action because of my knowledge that alleviates quite a bit of that fear factor. Fear is going to be there, but not in the same sense as I don't know anything.
Yeah, you can control your actions in the midst of fear rather than being controlled by your fear.
Yes. And then the discipline section of it also on the control comes into how far I go. Like there are certain situations where I don't have to actually even get into it with them, right? But then there's times that I may need to intervene, not on somebody else's behalf. There's different times that I have to go into it. But the fact of it is that my knowledge is what allows me to be able to do these things and not have the same fear that you see common, where people videotape, they watch everything go down, and you ask them afterwards, why I didn't, well, I was filming because I didn't know what to do. And so the fact of it is that I tell my students when they come in, I say, look, when you walk into a pitch black house, it's uncomfortable because of the fact you don't know what's there. Mm-hmm. It's super dark. Okay. Knowledge is that light switch. Because as soon as that light switch comes on, then you see everything there. You're gaining knowledge of what's there. Now you start to come down like this, yes, and you're calm, you're collective, yes. It's a similar aspect.
Yeah, and even if there's a threat, human beings hate uncertainty more than anything else. Like we would rather have bad news than ambiguity. So like, I mean, what you just said, like, even if you flip that metaphorical light on, you see there's a threat, you see there's an obstacle, you see that there's a risk. At least if you have the presence of mind to process that, that's better than being alone in the dark. Like at least you know what you're up against.
Thank you.
So you mentioned a couple things, Cory, on this idea of discipline, and you even mentioned somebody who takes a week-long course and now they're an expert. So I want to touch on that because you also mentioned this idea of a shortcut or a hack, and like I hate that word because that's what everybody on the internet is selling is a shortcut.
Yes,
and whether it's get rich quick or somebody who's never worked out in 20 years in 2 weeks, like you spent 2 decades treating your body like a dumpster, filling it with all kinds of garbage, and now all of a sudden you're gonna look like Hercules. Like everybody's looking for that, and I know that you're up against it too. And when you talk about not just training the body but training the mind to process risk, to process fear, like that's not, even if you have all the information, that's not something that happens overnight. It takes a lot of time.
Yes.
How do you help people deal with the patience of working through this process to develop the disciplines and skill sets necessary when they want to take shortcuts?
I explain to them pretty much from Jump Street that because we live in a society of instant gratification, right? The problem with that is that there's no such thing.
Yep.
Right. So when I have students that come through the door, I ask them first off, I say, I'm going to need you to be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to need you to take a moment and just kind of accept that I don't know it all. And that it's okay to be afraid. But at the same time, once you get out there and you start doing, you're going to realize that, no, there's nothing to be afraid here. Because in the process of whatever you take on that has a risk to it, there's going to be this fear factor. But once again, it brings us right back to the aspect of knowledge and being patient with oneself to say, okay, I'm going to be patient with myself because I know this is not overnight success. I know it's going to take time. I know that any life skill takes time. So Susan said, okay, so how long did it take you to run from the time you were born They're like, what? I don't even know, right? I'm all like, but you never gave it any thought, right? You didn't come out the womb sprinting. So the fact of it is that any life skill, it takes time. You didn't come to your first class of math and I got it figured out, right? You had to learn your basics. You had to learn how to count. Then you had to learn how to put the numbers together. That's in everything you do in your life. There's steps, right? Once you reach one step, you go to the next step. Eventually, when you do it long enough, it becomes definitely more comfortable, more natural for you to do so. Because like when I do my thing, people look at me and they're like, man, you're so fluid. Oh, man, you're really, and they come in the first thing. So how long did it take you?
People want to know, like, Cory, what is the least amount of effort
Bingo.
that I can put into and still look and move like you do? Yes. And it's like, that's the wrong question. So when you're working with a student, and I know you do some classes that might be weekend classes and things like that, but I mean, the idea is that supplements a longer trajectory of training. It's not meant like, I've got you for a weekend, now you're good to go.
Yes.
So do you have like a roadmap that you lay out for your students where they can see some of those little wins, those little victories along the way?
Yes.
So they can build confidence as they're being patient with themselves?
Yes. And so the system that I teach, which is Gidon system, that's why I was certified in Tanya, Israel.
Let me just pause it. So this dude's actually been to Israel. Like we talk about the imposters out there. The guy went and trained at the source, done it a couple times. I mean, you've gone to where this was based out of and broke this down to the very foundational piece that you've brought back to students here in Alaska.
Yes.
So sorry, keep going. Just didn't want to breeze past that.
All right. And so when you are looking at, well, how long did it take you? How long to build a set and everything else? I tell my students, well, look, when you come in the door, are you here just to learn self-protection? Or are you here? Because some people need to understand that we have a belt system, but it's not the same belt system as traditional martial arts. And each belt signifies your level of knowledge. Now, I have a lot of students that are growing, their skill set is building, and they don't have a belt because that's not the road they want to take down, right? But they're still building, they're still learning the same thing. But some people, they want that belt to register that they actually know. And granted, when you go for the belt, you're gonna know what you're doing because I'm training you to protect your life. So I can't be a belt factory and just hand you something because you've been paying. You come in and you're like, well, I've been here for a year, and I go, well, that's great, but you still don't know how to pivot your foot, right? So the mindset is that you have to understand that anytime I walk in, you will learn faster and be more productive when you're not, hard on yourself, right? And also when you empty your cup and your ego is not involved, because ego and fear are the biggest setbacks that I notice in life for a lot of people.
And that's 100% with our world too. Ego and fear.
Yep.
I mean, that's what keeps a lot of people from progressing in life. Anyways, keep going.
And so because of that, I have to always address those two factors, because I have people that come in from another system, right? And their ego is 70% of the problem, because they're like, well, I'm like, then you came into this door, right? You should be patient and give yourself a chance, because there's a possibility that there's something here that you didn't know about, because the world's a big place. Yes. And so that's why I tell people that, like, look, you're going to learn something new. And if it works, take it. If it works, take it, utilize it, but don't have your ego block you because I just don't want to say that my system's not as good as this one. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to come in and enhance what you already know and remove the things that you don't actually need.
So, I mean, you're having to give people a fresh perspective. Everybody's going to walk in your door with some metaphorical baggage.
Yes.
Could be fear, could be ego, could be something they learned.
Yes.
Some of those things might be helpful, some unhelpful.
Yes.
But this, I think, comes to this idea of coachability, where you need somebody to look at what you're presenting with fresh eyes and saying,
Yes.
I've got some tactics, some tools, some techniques that might help you. Can you be patient and open-minded enough to see if this fits into what you're trying to accomplish,
Exactly.
rather than coming in looking just for affirmation that what you've done your whole life is great and just keep doing all those things.
Yes.
I mean, we get that sometimes too. People say they want advice, but they really want is a pat on the back and say, Cory, man, you've been crushing it. Just keep doing everything you've already been doing.
Yes.
You need somebody coming in with that coachable mindset that says, maybe I've done some things, maybe I've got some trepidation, maybe I'm skeptical unnecessarily.
Yes.
But saying like, let's push aside some of that stuff and let's see what this system can provide for you. Because there's a course that I can take you on from where you are to where you want to be.
Yes.
But it's going to take a little while.
Yes, exactly. And then addressing the fact of people that have that fear. You have people come through that are just fearful. They hear about Krav Maga and get some Google searches, and all the videos they pull up is dealing with the military, and you see these guys banging each other like nobody's business. And the fact of it is that, yes, there is that element, right? But I ask people all the time, I say, would you rather come in and possibly get a bump or bruise here in an environment where we're looking out for your best interest? Or would you rather go into a situation where you don't have any knowledge and you're in a parking lot and now you're really on the line? And those injuries aren't, I got a few bruises on my arm, so from blocking, those are, I got a concussion or worse, right? So I tell students all the time, I say, look, we're going to be learning techniques and building a skill set that saves your life. So we have to be careful in the training. But I want you to come out and check out. I want you to get on the mat. I want you to do it so you see what's happening. Because also when you sit there and watch something, most people do, proof at YouTube. You go to YouTube, they watch it. Finances. It looks easy how he's explaining it, right? But they've never, ever actually did any hands-on. So it's the same thing. I tell them, I say, look, you have to get hands-on to actually see and notice if something works or not, right?
I think something else that you're talking about too that's so important is this idea of confidence. And some people listening might think, well, I'm probably never going to get mugged or nobody's ever going to break into my house. And that might be like statistically speaking, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. It depends on what neighborhood you live in. But what you're talking about isn't just in that moment. You're talking about empowering people to live with confidence every moment of their life.
Yes.
Because you're right. Most times you walk into a dark parking lot, you're going to be okay. Most times that you hear noise in the middle of the night, it's just your cat or your dog, your kid or something like that. But living with that confidence, knowing that if I am in that situation, I have the skill set, the training, the discipline to act appropriately. That gives somebody confidence every moment of their life, not just when they're in an actual life and death situation.
Yes. And so I tell students all the time, I say, you're building your insurance policy, right? You don't get in a car wreck every day, right?
Yeah, you don't wear your seatbelt only on the days where you're planning to get in a car accident.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but yet you still pay for that insurance. You're still putting that in there, right? So that just in case. The fact of it is that when you plan for your financial future, I'm assuming, right? It's because just in case, I want to make sure this is right. I want to make sure this is right, not just for myself, but for my family. Same thing in self-protection is that I want to establish things that I can not only protect myself, I can protect my family, bring my family in, right? And so you're building your insurance policy. Emmy, who's the founder of our association and the creator of Krav Maga, he has a very famous saying about being able to walk in peace, right?
I was just thinking that peace of mind, being able to sleep in.
Yeah, bingo. Walking in peace is you having the knowledge to deal with what comes your way. That way, no matter where you are, if you have the knowledge, you're good. You can always walk in peace. People that don't have the knowledge, well, yeah, when stuff hits the fan, guess what? You're going to be not in peace. You're going to be in panic and make a lot of misjudgments and perhaps go further than you would have if you had some proper training.
Well, not just that. When you aren't in those moments, if you aren't prepared, back of the head, you're going to know that. You're going to worry about all those what ifs more if you don't live in preparedness. And I think, preparedness allows you to live in peace, even if you may not need every aspect of that preparedness. I just think of what you're doing, Cory. Really, it's about empowerment. You're empowering people to live with more peace of mind, to live with more confidence. I mean, how important is that to your mission overall?
So here's the thing. I truly believe that no matter what your background is, right, what your circumstances are, that you have a right to protect yourself, right? And if I give you the knowledge and skill set, right, it will build your confidence. It will help subside fear, right? At the same time, you then start being able to control your life more so, right? Because now it's like, wait a second, if I can do this, I can do this, right? If I have this knowledge here, and when I tackle other things in my life, it'll translate.
There's a ripple effect into other areas of somebody's life. It doesn't just stay in the physicality of self-defense. It's self-confidence that manifests itself in multiple areas because they've overcome ego, fear, misinformation, all these different things. Cory, as we wrap up, where do people go to find more about you, your classes, and what you do?
So you can go to Krav Maga Anchorage, and you can Google that way, or you can go to our website, which is spelled KravMagaAnc.com, and you can look up our classes, our schedules, our special seminars that we're putting on. And if you call up, a lovely, beautiful woman will answer the phone, which is my wife, and she'll guide you through whatever plans or steps that you may want to take into your journey into self-protection.
So you can help customize this to the individual, what they're particularly looking for.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Cory, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom. And again, so much carryover into what we do. We're taking similar approaches in just different disciplines. I really appreciate you spending your time, your knowledge with us. Parting words, any last bits of wisdom you want to leave our audience?
Never stop learning.
I like it.
That's the mission. Never stop learning.
All right. Cory, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us two quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.
The information expressed is for general information only and is not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations for any individual. It is suggested that you consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation. Hypothetical investment results are for illustrative purposes only and should not be deemed a representation of future results.